Ethiopia and Sudan. For KTN News, I'm Paul Thiongo.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Paul Thiongo there with that story. Now, and as promised, we have that conversation about all the things that have been happening over the last 1 week. Now, this afternoon, I'm joined by two gentlemen, that is William Ramogi, an economist. Ramogi, good to see you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, and of course, we have Marshall Nyango, also an economist from Zimbabwe. Marshall, karibu.
Asante sana Jim.
All right, now, we have a lot of things to touch on today, but first let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the issue of the dollar shortage. Now I just want you to listen to what bank CEOs are saying about what is causing this shortage, and then we'll take up that conversation.
Investors are now pulling back and holding the hard currencies within their investment spheres in their different countries, and tied to that, of course, one of our biggest sources of FX is tourism. So tourism is not at the level that it was pre-COVID period.
When you look at our books, we have sufficient FX, but they don't belong to the bank, they belong to customers. And unless a customer decides to trade on them, they are not available in the market, right? So we think we have sufficient dollars, as you see in the numbers in the book, but customers haven't chosen to trade with them. But the other most important thing is, for the same kind of business, and given the depreciation of the currency, customers consume more FX, and that's bringing that strain. And as well as what you've seen about on fuel, it does put in a lot of demands for the oil marketers.
Gentlemen, there you have the sentiments from the bank CEOs. Ramogi, first with you, what is happening from your assessment with the dollar shortage in the country?
Thank you. First things first, I think yes, there are local factors and international factors. The international factor is that the US dollar has strengthened and the Kenya shilling has suffered on the background of that strength. The local factors are such that we are importing a lot. We are importing food. A few months back, the government declared several food items to be duty-free. So there is a lot of pressure to import maize, to import rice, to import cooking oil. And so all this import is putting a demand on the dollar. That is apart from the normal imports of oil and etc. So because of this, I think there's a lot of pressure on the dollar availability, including debt repayment. And this has caused the shortage that we are seeing today. And but beyond that also, there is the fact, I like what Russo said, that yes, there is that shortage, and then there's the artificial one caused by our own psychology.
Yeah.
So that if I have dollars in somewhere in KCB, I would tell my banker, hold on to it, because I want to see how high this thing can go before I could actually trade or sell on it. And so there are people like that who are just out to hold on to the dollar they have.
Yeah.
One, because of the fear that this thing might not be available tomorrow. And two, because of the speculative reasons.
All right, Marshall, that is KCB CEO Paul Russo says, we have dollars, yes, but unless the customer decides to trade on it, there's nothing we can do about it. What do you make of that statement?
He's actually right, and I also agree with that, Ramogi. You see, it's true that once you have dollar in your account, it's your money. You can't just, the bank can't just trade on it without your authorization. But all the same, the question is why the pressure to trade? Because some of these people, we know a number of people hold their assets in dollars, and it has been happening for a while. So I think Ramogi has just touched on the mostly local factors, the domestic imbalance of trade that is causing that problem. But again, he touched slightly about the Fed, and I think that's really the biggest contributor. Yeah. Because normally what happened, all these things started with the COVID back then and the wars in Ukraine, so that caused a lot of inflation, I think, in US and major other developing major economies. So what happened, of course, in addition to tame inflation, the Fed started increasing their policy rate, what is equivalent to treasury bill rate locally. So that gradual increase of the Fed rate or the policy rate means that the dollar starts strengthening and all other currencies start suffering. I think Kenya being one of them, we have seen that, and you've seen that locally, even a number of now foreign investors disposing their stocks, sometimes at what you could even consider throwaway price. You can see Safaricom has even declined to as much as 17 shillings. Very, very, we haven't seen that, I think, since 2015. So it just tells you that we have these foreign investors who now believe that the rates in their own countries, which they consider less risky, are better. So they're taking their money to invest there. And because of that, they have to sell this local investment in Kenya shillings and buy dollars. And that huge demand all happening at the same time, together with speculation, as my colleague has already talked about, and again, that combined with the imbalance between import-export, all those factors combined is what is causing this crisis. And I think it will continue for a while. So I think we are facing a tough time because most of this, we don't have control of what happens in the US.
All right. Now, Ramogi, when you look at the US, now the Fed has been accused of downplaying or rather overreacting. Now, when you come back to the Kenyan context, are we downplaying this shortage? Because when you hear that banks are selling these dollars at over 140 shillings, which is way above the CBK rate, what do you make of that? How then do we make sure that we get in charge, we get on top of this?
Well, first of all, I don't think the Fed is overreacting. Generally speaking, central banks are conservative. They see what's happening and they take a while before they actually make a decision in any direction. And in this case, I think the Federal Reserve Bank had time to study the market, and they appreciated the fact that inflation rates have been on the rising since the days of COVID, and there is need to just tighten the monetary policy in the country. And so I think they are not overreacting. Coming back into the country, you know, the buying and selling of the dollar is a factor of demand and supply. And so you really, I mean, what the central bank gives is more indicative, is more of a suggestion, as you had earlier on put it. But what pushes the buying and the selling prices is the demand and supply. And the demand right now is high, a lot higher than the supply, and is added to the fact that foreign investors are withdrawing their money from the economy, which means they are withdrawing it in form of dollars. And so that means there's a lot of pressure on the dollar. And I don't think that we've seen the worst yet. I think given the circumstances, we'll probably continue seeing the shilling worsen against the dollar.
All right, and of course, Ramogi, we still have a lot to discuss, gentlemen. But first, let's take a quick break. We pay some bills, and then we'll come and continue that conversation.